The Bliss Business Podcast, the show about empathy, connection, and consciousness in business. Today's episode is brought to you by Zero Company, your paid search, social media, and programmatic ad experts.
Welcome back to Marketing with Purpose, a segment of the Bliss Business Podcast where we explore what it really takes for marketing leaders to create impact that goes beyond the numbers. I'm Steven Sakash, and in each episode, one of our team members sits down with a marketing expert to explore their leadership approach and strategies that drive performance and resonate with their audience. And together, we'll dive into what's working, what's not, and how purpose and empathy can transform the way brands connect with people. So let's get started. Today, I'm excited to tell you, I'm joined by Sara Whiteleather, Senior Director of Marketing at Batteries Plus. And so we're continuing the conversation with Batteries Plus. And Sara brings a deep experience across digital strategy, growth marketing, e-commerce, customer engagement, with leadership roles spanning consulting, agency, and brand side organizations. And so, Sara, bear with me here. I'm gonna embarrass you with some of your background here. So, Sara has held leadership roles at Nationwide Insurance and a fintech startup, leading initiatives focused on digital transformation, customer acquisition, and business growth. And her agency experience includes executive leadership positions at AMP Agency and DigitasLBi North America, where she led growth of leading retail, CPG, and consumer banking brands. And throughout her career, she has led record-breaking new business wins, built high-performing teams, and delivered measurable growth for both emerging and established brands. And we're going to explore breaking down silos across teams. And I'm excited to dive into how marketing leaders can create stronger alignment between teams that operate separately. And at its best, digital growth is not just about optimizing campaigns. It's about connecting people and systems and insights and shared goals so that the customer experience feels seamless and the business can grow with more clarity and purpose. Sara, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited about the topic we're going to discuss today.
Yes, Sara. So before we dive in, I'd love to hear why breaking down silos across teams is a topic you chose to explore with us today, and what makes that so important right now?
Yes, I love this topic. I feel like it's a very under-discussed topic, just in terms of how much collaboration can have a direct impact on the business, bringing people together to solve common shared problems. I've seen firsthand just how organizations really have left a lot of opportunity on the table when different departments, people are working independently instead of collaboratively. And personally, the biggest successes I've had in my career have always come from working with teams, working with, my stakeholders across departments towards that shared outcome. And I think that shared sense of purpose is important. We're innately connected, humans through that type of experience. And so getting people to collaborate and have that shared sense of purpose is what motivates all of us. The other piece, I think, is, when you just think about the consumer expectations that exist today, consumers don't view brands as independent departments, or they don't see a customer experience through independent departments. If a problem happens, they don't care if that problem belongs to marketing, e-commerce, operations, customer service. They expect a seamless experience. And so no longer can these departments operate independently. Those problems are shared problems across the entire organization.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, like from the marketing standpoint, if there's a problem with if it's not in marketing though, it's a problem for marketing. Trust us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Exactly. And usually you at least play a piece of that problem. But yeah, I mean, I know you heard a lot about this from Chris in the meeting you guys had last Friday. We're a franchise business as well. So we hear all the time from our franchise owners about problems that have nothing to do with marketing, and it's still our responsibility to figure out a way to cross-functionally solve those challenges. So whether you're working with a franchise owner, you're delivering experiences for a customer, that deep collaboration across departments is just a critical piece of business operation now.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why, like on our show, we get into all these other areas of business that aren't kind of marketing related, because we want to make sure that consumption experience, because like you said, someone's going to experience something with that company that's, and if it's negative, it's a problem. That's a problem for the marketing side.
Absolutely.
And I don't know, a lot of marketers, if they think about it that way, but that's typically where we get some of those disconnects and those silos, is when we don't kind of address it as a group. Where do you often see silos show up, and how can they limit marketing performance?
Yeah, I mean, I think, the metrics that we all view as success metrics really at times can be what is a huge driver of those silos. So when you think about different departments, or even, different teams within marketing, we're all kind of operating under our own, departmental type of metrics. So, marketing might be really focused on driving growth. Our e-commerce counterparts are really focused on conversion rates. Our product and merchandising partners are focused on pricing and product assortment. Our operations teams are, focused on inventory levels. Everyone has their own set of kind of KPIs and metrics, and every single one of those teams can look highly effective on paper if you're, meeting each one of your own kind of individual KPIs, but there can be a ton of things lacking from a customer experience perspective, or again, that overall shared vision of what are we all trying to accomplish together. And we see this all the time, with marketing campaigns. We can very much launch what we deem super successful marketing campaign, but if we're not thinking about, do stores have the right levels of inventory for the products that we're marketing? Are the operations solid enough so that if we drive a ton of increased demand, we can actually fulfill that? All of those pieces require connected metrics and KPIs in order to deliver against this campaign that we've created. And if we don't have that, not only could it be not a successful campaign up front, but we might actually be delivering a customer experience that could have long-term growth or long-term challenges along the way. If we drive a ton of demand for products we don't have, or, operations that we can't fulfill, that demand might go away forever. That customer might say, hey, I thought I was going to have this type of experience. It didn't satisfy me. And so therefore I'm done with this company. So, thinking about those shared metrics, I think, are really, really important to breaking down some of those silos that exist.
Yeah. How do you create those shared goals to kind of help everyone understand, how their work connects to that bigger business outcome? What's kind of the process there?
Yeah, I mean, I a lot of times with my teams, KPIs are important and those metrics are important. They're, milestones to help us kind of get to the more important piece, which is that shared kind of vision, shared goal, or even I like to focus a lot with my teams on broader learning agenda questions. Like, what outcome are we trying to achieve together? If we can all, land on what those broader, learning agenda questions are, then we can set the individual KPIs that each team needs to kind of focus on to get to that broader business goal or that broader learning agenda question. So I think focusing on some of that and putting it back in really just layman's terms, it's not just about conversion rate and some of those key metrics that we focus on, but what are we trying to deliver together? What is that overarching kind of North Star experience that we're trying to garner? I think also puts purpose, behind what we're all trying to do. I think too, bringing, our cross-functional partners into those discussions early on. We talk a lot about, marketing type goals that really marketing only owns a piece of. You think of larger constructs like increasing customer retention. That's a big one that marketing focuses on. But when you really think about it, marketing only influences a small piece of that. Going back to the example I gave around a campaign, customer retention, like we got to have the products that people are going to buy. We got to be priced effectively. We need to have, our store operations, our store hours, our store experience, set up to be able to create an experience that builds loyalty and retention. So thinking about, even the KPIs and kind of metrics that we create and bringing those cross-functional teams together to think of that North Star is usually the place that I like to start.
Yeah, thinking about this, can you share a time like when the customer data, the feedback, that digital behavior helped bring the different teams together or shifted the way kind of the business approached a certain decision?
Yeah, I think customer data is obviously such an amazing nugget of information that organizations have, and finding ways to mine that data and turn it into insights and actual roadmaps to problem solving is like the goal. That's kind of what should drive every decision that we make. I think, going back to the examples I was giving of, each department having their own metrics, I think the same thing happens with customer feedback in different ways. So, our e-commerce partners might see lower conversion rates on something. Our customer service teams might be hearing complaints about something. Our operations team is noticing process delays. And without a way to connect all of those things, they look like individual problems. I've seen time and time again, when you can connect those teams, it's amazing how we're all seeing the exact same problem. It's just symptoms of the problem in different ways and interpreted by different teams. So, having relationships, I think, is so critical. Building trust and inter department teams so that type of information can flow freely is a huge piece of building that system. Our customer service team is mining customer data all the time. We have feedback loops so that they can come back and say, hey, I'm getting these type of comments through our customer service team. Within marketing, my team owns our organic social channels. That's a great place too to see the comments, build the insights. What are people talking about? What are the, most common complaints that we're seeing? A good example that we had happen recently is, at Batteries Plus, our, big differentiator and what we really stand on as a brand is our expertise. So, we are more of a white glove service oriented business. You're going to come to us to get your car battery replaced if you don't know how to do it yourself. You can't walk into a big box retailer or an AutoZone and say, yep, I need, this specific battery. I'm going to pull it off the shelf. I can install it in my driveway when I get home. We don't play in that field. We want to be able to install it for you. We want to be able to make sure that you get exactly what you need. We're for the people that are like, my car battery's dead and I don't even know where to start. So matching the right product for someone is such a critical piece of what we do, because most of our customers can't do that for themselves. So on our e-commerce site, we have built a very elaborate way to match the perfect battery with someone's car. We call it our Fit Finder. And we've done that to demonstrate expertise. You come in, you tell us the type of car you have, the model, all of the information, and we match that battery to you. And we built that through, again, customer insight that our customers don't know. So we need to help guide them. We're not going to be able to just give them, 50 car batteries and let them choose for themselves. So we're going to build a very elaborate experience so that they can get matched with the perfect battery. What we were hearing anecdotally, what we were seeing from, our conversion rates, our drop-off points is, well, yes, people do need the help. Requiring them to go through this very lengthy fitment finder was also not optimal. We were seeing a lot of drop-off rates. We were hearing some complaints in social just about the challenges of that process. And so we actually partnered with Google to figure out, using AI, if there was some way for us to autofill a lot of that fitment finder based on search behavior and what we know about a customer. And so through that data mining and through our partnership with Google, we've been able to really streamline that process, and our conversion rates have gone up substantially. We're hearing much less complaints, but that was really really good insight at first. Like, we need to help match people. That's what we're hearing. Like, our customers don't know. That's customer data as well that built that experience. But the feedback loop of how we optimize it and continuing to work with our customer service teams, using channels like organic social to hear that customer data and improve that experience over time, is something that we'll continue to do.
Gotcha. You're bringing me back. I remember dealing with this one company that had this very complicated purchase, trying to get people to the right product, and built all this decision tree stuff, and it went layers and layers deep. And then just yesterday we were talking about some AI development on how it can kind of get through that, navigate those things that took so long to set up and a lot of investment. And it's just like, oh yeah, we're getting them to the right product, but like you said, it's not a great experience. When you think about how you balance kind of that need, for building these kinds of things, or building with speed, and then bringing the right people into the conversation, how do you make sure that you're getting the right decisions made before you invest so much time on some of these big projects? That to me seems like one of the biggest areas where collaboration really helps, cut down on maybe some of the potential pitfalls you can really run into with some of these kind of projects.
Yes, I completely agree. I think a huge misconception is that collaboration slows organizations down. When in reality, what I've seen is that poor collaboration just creates rework, misalignment, delays, like really slows things down. So I think the key is, identifying and building out frameworks for who really needs to be involved in decisions, creating those decision-making frameworks. Not every person needs to be in every meeting. They can't be. Every single person on my team is a decision maker. Every single person on my team owns a role that has authority to drive, projects forward and to make those decisions. And so I think, being upfront on goals, roles, responsibilities of projects. We do a lot of RACI charts where we are very clear on like who's responsible for driving these things forward, who's accountable, who just needs to be informed. Taking the time up front to kind of build some of those frameworks for projects, I think can help people move more quickly and really understand the role that they play in those project teams. But I definitely don't think, the fastest organizations are the ones with the fewest conversations. I think it's more about, being the ones that have those clearest communication frameworks.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like you said, otherwise it's just like another hurdle, another obstacle, another, like, why didn't we talk to them before we got to this point and all that? So you learn the hard way, or you can, just pause a little bit and collaborate on that. So you've worked yourself across, agency, enterprise, and growth focused environments. How has that experience shaped the way you collaborate across teams today? And maybe what have you learned about helping different groups work toward the same vision?
Yeah, I think one of my greatest career kind of strengths is that I've been able to see organizations through a lot of different perspectives. In the agency and consulting space, you learn how to bring together, diverse stakeholders. You learn how to navigate competing priorities of those stakeholders at times.
That's a special skill.
It sure is, which takes experience and time. You learn how to manage similar but also different problems across industries. I've loved that about consulting and agency work. You work with financial services brands, CPG brands, in so many different ways. They're focused on different problems, but really a lot of the same problems. So it's about applying, and solving different problems across industries, which I think is really great perspective to be gained. And you also learn how to navigate very complex organizations. Having that client service oriented mindset, I think those are skills that are incredible to learn. And I'm really grateful I learned those before making the decision to go to the brand side. On the brand side, I think, and the reason I made that shift is I wanted to go deeper into an organization. I wanted to understand, the operational realities. I wanted to be a part of the internal decision-making processes. I really wanted to understand, long-term business strategy and how decisions continue to impact, organizations over time. So I think gaining, those different perspectives can be really, really helpful. And I think, across all of those experiences, this idea of collaboration and shared vision and shared purpose has always been a consistent one. People collaborate much more when they understand not only what they're doing, but why they're doing it, how it contributes to something larger, more meaningful. We all want to do meaningful work. And so even though, those are different experiences and perspectives can be different, this whole idea of shared purpose, collaboration is foundational to success in all of those.
Yeah, you made me think about, like, within our agency too, we've got, people who specialize in e-commerce and people who specialize in kind of maybe the investment space where there's really no good attribution sometimes, like that, like you have in e-commerce. But it's huge when we work together in these teams, because we can take something that you learn from e-commerce and apply it over here in a space where you don't have that level of tracking. So, hey, this is where we tend to see a lot of, flaky traffic. Let's avoid that, because of our experience in e-commerce. And so when you can kind of blend that diversity of skills and thought together, you're always going to come out ahead, as long as you're able to keep that communication going, which I think is sometimes the challenge. So we like to talk a lot about, like, systems on this show, things, like processes. Are there any practices, that have helped you keep teams aligned, and without slowing down execution and all that stuff that people worry about? What kind of systems do you use that help with that connection? Anything that comes to mind?
Yeah, I think the systems are critical, breaking down those silos, not solved just by good intentions. It is, building those frameworks and systems to do it. I think the shared metrics that we talked about earlier is a critical piece, like having those shared business metrics across departments. We do a lot of cross-functional planning sessions. I have weekly ongoing, planning sessions, strategy sessions that include our product teams, our merchandising teams, our store operations team, our field teams who are in our stores every day. So we have, a cadence in which we all get together and really focus on strategy. I think, transparent dashboards, and once you've set those core metrics and KPIs, giving people visibility is really important. It can't be a group of 5 people that really are monitoring those business metrics. It has to be widespread and widely shared across the teams that are all managing towards that shared vision. And then I think those clear ownership roles. I talked about racy charts and all of those things that, building those at the time can feel like busy work, but they're so critical to keep people in their appropriate seat in a project, to understand what is the role I need to play here. And that might look different than the role that I'm playing on another, piece of the business or project. I think the other piece, and you just mentioned this, that I absolutely love of how you guys, operate from an agency standpoint, is understanding each other's work. That is so important. I encourage our teams to go into our stores, do, rides with our retail teams. We sit as an organization in marketing right next to our merchandising team. So overhearing even those conversations, understanding the pain points that our counterparts across the organization are facing is so important to collaboration. And it's also really interesting. It's a way to learn. It's a way to be curious. I'm I may never sit in a product role, but I'm so grateful to have amazing product counterparts who I still get to learn what that's like. I still get to, educate myself on different pieces of the business. So I think, that collaboration of just being curious about what other people are focused on and what they're doing, I think that really can encourage people to, operate and do their best work as well.
Yeah, thinking about that, even with me, like in the past few months, we've been working with one of our clients where, they've got their product development team that's, bringing us products and we have to market them. And there are times like, well, why did they choose this one? And so now we're having these conversations where it's like, hey, here's what like data and search is telling us. Here's what the trends are showing. And they're like, oh, I'm so glad you got this. Because now we can make their job much easier before they even launch a product. So we're now having these conversations where we're collaborating with that product development side on something where it's like, okay, hey, here's where it's trends. This is when something popped, and they're like, oh man, okay, if I can, you can get me this data when this happens, then we're gonna be so much better as a group. But it's like totally these two different areas that just really never collaborated before, and it's like, finally having those conversations. It's this such healthy thing for us to become like this living, breathing organism that all works together versus something that's totally shut off.
I love that. I mean, we've had very similar working sessions with our product team, and it makes me so excited when I hear, our product team talk about nerdy Google keyword type stuff. Like I'll have a product member be like, can we run a PLA on this product? Can we do this? And whenever that happens, I'm like, we've done our job. They're becoming paid search experts. They're bringing the product knowledge, we're bringing the marketing knowledge, and everyone's learning together and actually creating cross-functional ideas, which is really, really neat to see.
Yeah, that it takes a bit to get there, depending on the companies, but yeah, I love that. Like when you hear those conversations, you're like, yes, this is how you break down those silos and you come together. So thinking about purpose, empathy, and impact. So how do purpose and empathy kind of shape the way you lead, cross-functional collaboration? And maybe if you can share a story where breaking down a silo helped create that better outcome for a customer, a team member, or business partner. I know you kind of just mentioned a little bit on that product side, but if you've got any other stories there, we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I love those two words. Purpose and empathy are so important in every aspect of our life. I think empathy is what really helps us understand the pressures, the priorities, challenges that other teams face. And that is really helpful. It can also help us build that trust because we're all, want to succeed together. We can build up, our counterparts and make them successful the same way that they can us. So I love those words. I think they're just critical pieces of how we should operate in every part of our life. But yeah, I mean, the example.
Amen.
The example I was just sharing, I mean, I'll go a little bit deeper on that. We last year decided to restructure our entire kind of Google campaign portfolio. So much has changed in the Google landscape and product suite now. It's no longer just search, shopping. We've got all kinds of different Google products available to us now. PMax and demand gen and YouTube campaigns and all of the things. So we really use that as an opportunity to say, it's time to completely restructure and rethink of how we're set up. New AI capabilities coming into play, how do we want to tackle this? And so we built a completely integrated product merchandising marketing initiative where those teams were just as much a part of this restructure as our marketing teams. Our marketing teams could bring the marketing experience, the Google Ads experience, the understanding, broad keyword research and how we were going to cast a wide net. But what we couldn't do is bring that deep product knowledge that those teams, our merchandising and product teams, use to really, really round out how we restructured these campaigns. They had all these amazing ideas for super niche keywords and terms and ways that people were finding batteries that we would have never thought of. different applications that batteries go into that we would have never thought of. So, having those groups collaborate and come up with all of these different new ways that we could really advertise our products made such a significant impact to our program. And since that launch of that restructure, we have over doubled, our ROI on search. It's been an incredible year, and a lot of the kudos to that program goes to our product and merchandising teams who were riding shotgun with us that entire way.
Yeah, I think we refer to what we do now as just like empathetic marketing, and because we really want to make sure that that's forefront of everything that we're doing, because you won't have those conversations, like you said, where you're really getting into those very niche customer journeys and all those little details that marketers love if they can get there without very purposeful kind of thought with your approach. Sara, this has been great. Thank you for joining us on the Marketing with Purpose series. Appreciate all your insights. And to our audience and listeners, I hope today's conversation sparks some new ideas about how you can build stronger connections across teams and create marketing strategies that are not just measurable, but more aligned and collaborative and human. And if you found value in this discussion, please subscribe, and share it, and keep the conversation going. And remember, great marketing doesn't just perform, it connects. And we'll see you next time on the Bliss Business Podcast.